PS1 was conceived at an important turning point in console history, a time when 32-bit processors and CD-ROM technology were allowing fully 3D environments and utterly horrifying full-motion video to become regular features of home gaming.
No tyrannosaurs!
More on him later, stay tuned. The result was, yes, a strong library of mainstream successes, sure, but better yet, in my opinion, a seemingly endless supply of more obscure, far-flung adventures centered around colourful mascot wannabes, gruesome hack-and-slash action, unique and trippy puzzlers, and Japan. Just Japan in general. So, since the PS1 will be celebrating its 25th birthday in Europe and America this year, perhaps you'll humour me across several videos as I delve through some of the dusty, forgotten corners of the PlayStation library and unearth things that you didn't even know you'd missed. Careful though, it'll probably get pretty weird, like almost immediately. Oh my, well, it's too late now. Let's just run a thing, I guess. One of the most bizarre yet underappreciated subgenres of the original PlayStation's library is that of its futuristic sci-fi sports games. There are far more titles that fall under that banner than you might expect, way too many to cover in one video in fact, and my god, they are entertaining for all the right reasons, and most of the wrong ones too. What in the name of God? A good place to start is Gridrun, or Gridrunner if you want to get North American about this. Now do stick with me for just a moment if you think this gameplay looks unremarkable, because we're only about 2 minutes away from footage like this. Anyway, the reason why Gridrun is a good place to start is that it is in many ways typical of other games within the sci-fi sports genre. Time and again you'll find that these games open with an unsettlingly putty-like FMV intro cutscene telling us that somewhere out in deep space, numerous alien or robotic competitors are taking part in a contest, which is either extremely violent, horribly dystopian, visually spectacular, or usually a mix of all three. So we boot up Gridrun, and sure enough we're smacked square in the jaw with the uncanny valley facial features of your boy Axel, who, while exploring the Gridonian asteroid field in deep space, gets embroiled in a sadistic bloodsport version of Capture the Flag, facing off against a gang of extraterrestrials so motley that I literally just had to use the word motley. Predictably, the single-player action takes place across a series of different planets, each with an ostentatious name and clearly defined theme. Fire, ice, Egyptian, fisherman's jetty? Crucially though, the reason I so often adore these PS1 sci-fi sports, and something I'll be mainly focusing on today in fact, is that good world building and imaginative character design seem to unfailingly carry the games through any flaws they might have, whether it's technological limitations or less than brilliant gameplay. In the case of Gridrun, which incidentally is actually super fun to play in spite of its 1996 release, the average player will find themselves repeatedly sticking around for just one more level, simply in order to watch the unending slew of character introduction graphics. You will be hooked from the moment you enter level 1 and meet Krosh. I mean, imagine being slow, stupid, and having the world's most impractical hands. I don't know what I'd do with my evenings. No wonder he looks so frustrated. Your third victory against any given opponent in Gridrun results in them being instantly executed in a rather graphic explosion of blood. I'd ordinarily think this was an unnecessarily brutal fate, but in the case of Krosh, it probably counts as a mercy killing at this point. For stage 2, we head to the planet Nimbus, you know, as in
wow, look at it!
And find that the threat level has spiked rather rapidly with the introduction of Minox the Cowman, who has human nipples but is thankfully wearing a loincloth.
Look at it!
I don't want to look at it! In the third level, we meet Lethotep, though how he ever got out of Nedry's car is anyone's guess.
Stick, stupid!
Alright, so admittedly, some of the names of the characters and levels beyond this point aren't particularly inspired. There's a mantis called Mantos, a snow planet named Glacier, the water world of Aqua 4 is home to a sea monster who goes by Kraken, and the obligatory lava level is known simply as Ash. Great. But hey, credit where credit's due, because in this case, rather than dub the resident boss character Pyro or Blaze It, the developers instead decided to give him a name that could easily be mistaken by my long-sighted grandmother as Bollock, if she wasn't wearing her glasses or ever used the word bollock. On the subject of male anatomy though, this is Cauldron, and quite frankly, I've never been more attracted to an FMV robot. By the time we get to level 10 and meet a sentient tree whose name sounds like a passing ambulance, it's hard to imagine how things could get any stranger, but then in walks self-professed freak of nature Argus, who is a spellcasting cyclops in wrestling clothes that can make himself invisible, and before I know it, so many of you have filled the comments section with "this is the content I subscribed for" that YouTube shuts down the whole channel because it thinks we must have been buying engagement on the dark web. Fortunately, we're now only one level away from Nemean the Lion, and quite frankly, I've never been more attracted to an FMV robot. Sorry Cauldron, you're second best now, mate. Meow. In all seriousness though, I really do mean it when I say that far and above the genuinely decent gameplay and pretty stellar sound design, the thing driving you through Gridrun is merely the promise that you'll have another one of these animated character profiles to gawk at in just a few minutes' time. What the hell is that? Surprisingly, and rather disappointingly, the least interesting character is probably the final boss herself, who just looks like Terry Hatcher has been hit so hard in the face with a snow shovel that she's had to start wearing it as a bonnet. My god, do I love these PS1 FMVs though. Like, if we now sidle over to Starwinder the Ultimate Space Race, another member of the so-called sci-fi sports genre, you'll find that it follows much the same template as Gridrun, but to even greater extremes. The game is strung along with Play-Doh-like news coverage of a deep space, alien-ridden racing tournament where contestants do their utmost to blow each other out of the sky. Fascinatingly, the host of said news coverage, Barlow Lenz, manages to defy a fundamental law of physical attraction by having the most symmetrical face in the known universe, and yet somehow being one of the least sexually appealing men I've ever had the misfortune to look at. Now, Gridrun couldn't fully prove the point that I made earlier about good world building being the saving grace of a bad sci-fi sports game, because it's actually an all-round great title if you ask me. The gameplay in Starwinder though is pretty dire. Races take place on rails, huge winding structures found floating in space that have been repurposed into tracks, and they look horrible, especially at high speed, which, you know, is a bit of a problem in a racing game. And yet, sure enough, here we are grinding through the thing regardless, because I honestly can't get enough of all the between-race cutscenes. Playing as Earthman Connor Rhodes, you'll encounter, you guessed it, a diverse assortment of alien and robotic rivals, from Neuron 9 to Coax to Zach Kilmer. There's a talking dinosaur called Guthul Gulhurg, and the best thing is, you'll never know whether that was me reading his actual name or if it was just the sound of me retching, because my god, look at the way his face moves. Additionally, Starwinder actually has one thing going for it that Gridrun doesn't, in its cracking sense of humour.
My contact lens! Nobody move!
As well as being crammed full of over-the-top science fiction nonsense that's just inherently amusing to listen to any day of the week,
The Neocean from Zeta Pupus 111, Dextor the Terrible.
it also throws a few genuinely well-delivered gags at you when you least expect them.
His victory was celebrated on his homeworld of Neos with 3 days of heavy sarcasm.
And the FMVs aren't all enjoyably hideous either. Upon entering a new chapter, you're often treated to some rather attractive establishing shots, and the cutscenes featuring rival racer Engon the Cryptomorph frequently involve some pretty impressive shape-shifting animations for the time. These ceaselessly entertaining news segments, along with the game's surprisingly gripping ending, make Starwinder at the very least worthy of being watched in YouTube long play form. Just stay away from, actually playing it with your own thumbs. The more I think about it, I reckon even the late 90s dev teams themselves knew that they could get away with making subpar are sports games if only there was some creative lore in there somewhere. Take Moho by developer Lost Toys. In America, this game was called Ball Breakers, and its one-line Wikipedia article tells you more than everything you need to know. Ball Breakers is a game in which convicted felons have their lower halves amputated so that they can compete in brutal combat. Brilliant. Now, at this point, you probably won't be surprised to see that while the opening cutscene is as gnarly as this, the gameplay is sometimes as nauseating as this. It's basically Marble Madness featuring irreversible surgical mutilation. But yet again, despite the somewhat dodgy implementation of a very dodgy concept, the addition of a few distinct playable characters and a bunch of endearingly odd cutscenes are all it takes to hold your interest in Ball Breakers long enough for you to realise that there is actually some fun and varied gameplay to be had here. Go figure. Sticking to playing with our balls for just a minute, partly because it's been a criminally long time since I last made mention of either human or minotaur genitalia, we've got some exceptions that prove the rule here. Dead Ball Zone, Rage Ball, and Speed Ball 2100 all depict a similar kind of brutal futuristic field game in which bloodthirsty chads of centuries yet to come beat 7 shades of not a very cultured video game out of each other. The gameplay in all 3 cases is okay, which I said slowly to emphasise my hesitance. Did you spot that? But since all 3 games lack either a narrative-driven campaign or a quirky cast of characters to distract from the likes of this in-engine cheerleader sequence, I doubt many players could stomach more than a couple of rounds in any of these. Ask Pitbull. Pitbull will tell you. I mean, look at this. Look at all these badly animated freaks playing literally the same sport we were just looking at, but with a veneer of some actual goddamn creativity. Admittedly, the audio design sounds like a pair of landmines having unconsensual sex. But this just in, my eyeballs are deaf, so they don't give a fuck. Oh, so many questions to be answered. Who do you want to be? Where do you want to play? Why has the Earth got a malignant tumour? It's all happening in Pitball, and you can experience it yourself in the boots of genetically engineered gorillas, more anthropomorphic bulls, or E.T.'s hip-hop happening older brothers who definitely smoke weed 6 days a week. Futuristic ball games, as we've established, are 10 a penny on the PS1, but I'm telling you now, if I could only play one for the rest of time, the choice would be abundantly clear. Assuming I was allowed to play it on mute. Sitting somewhere in the middle of all the titles we've examined so far is the wonderfully weird Aeronauts, a game in which, surprise, a disparate group of aliens, wingsuit pilots this time, compete in a violent interplanetary contest. Admittedly, the graphics and fluidity here lack a certain elegance, especially by modern standards, but on top of its numerous game types, varied arenas, upgrade mechanics, and in-game commentary, you can bet your arse there's also a wacky-ass roster, and possibly the creme de la creme of irresistibly horrifying openings. To whet your appetite, please enjoy this completely unedited 9-second excerpt. And the Oscar for Best Screenplay has been jettisoned into a black hole just to make certain it never falls into the clutches of aeronauts. After this absolute humanitarian crisis of visual media, SKP-TV introduces us to yet another set of dystopian prisoners competing for their freedom, namely Hiroshi Bada, Lady Alex, Oscar the Grouch imitator Bo Winnebago, Grace Miles, who, despite her anaphylactic face, is presumably supposed to be the token sexy one because she unexpectedly says yes out of bloody nowhere, Fraser Blade, as in Fraser Blade. Oh, what an edgelord. Douglas Worcester, which is a word you definitely can't say on YouTube in 2020. Taxman, who... yeah, I don't even know, and Honk, the obligatory creepy clown option that's present in about 70% of all PS1 and PS2 character rosters.
Wanna see my pocket?
The rest of this FMV sees the gang whizzing around a Zeppelin, watched over by a self-important rubber-faced man in an absolutely criminal zebra print suit. I don't care what century it is, this will never be okay. Coincidentally though, zebra print, in a weird way, actually brings us at long last to our final title of the day, the slightly anomalous Running Wild, a game whose startup screen and theme music are so overstimulating, I'm pretty sure they can give you type 2 diabetes. Oh, I don't know what this is, but I'm ready for it! Now, if you've seen this game before, I know what you're thinking. It hardly falls under the umbrella of futuristic sci-fi sports. But actually, even putting aside the fact that one of the tracks goes right through a literal moon base and features an unlockable robot character, never in recorded history have anthropomorphic animals been known to compete in cartoony foot races. Ergo, this must be taking place in the far distant future. Ha! Flawless logic. In any case, let's not beat about the bush. I'm obviously itching to introduce you to yet another ridiculous character lineup. So hey, drink it in everybody. It may be your last. You've got Braz, who, according to the accompanying sound effect, is the cool one. Rad. Here's Gwyn, who's, another sexy one, I think? Yes. This is Boris, who's inexplicably being allowed to compete despite the blatant fact that if you cut him open, he would bleed performance-enhancing drugs. That is the General, whose nation of origin is fortunately not given, otherwise this could be irredeemably problematic. Next is Coronado, our third horny man of the video.
Look at it!
And my go-to answer for the question, what disease cause big problem for people in many country? Corona do. And finally, enter Mei Ling, who, irrespective of the fact that she's not wearing any underwear, has enough self-confidence to do this. Hey, more power to her. Shame we just got demonetized for it though. So you run your races, you unlock your bonus content, you play as the secret dinosaur character who looks like this, because he just does and we're all just gonna have to accept it, okay? And then at the end of it all, you feel you have to ask, these sci-fi sports, Peter, are they really worth my time? But honestly, at this point, you just have to judge it for yourself. How much does wacky world building mean to you? Could it be enough to carry a game on its own, or could you not give less of a damn how many eyes your competitor has got? A good handful of these games are actually pretty good anyway, regardless of their redeeming lore, but others, as you've seen, are not. So it's up to you, really. If you'd sooner sit down and play your 1000th arcade run of Tekken 3, or seek refuge with the safely conventional character designs of, say, Ape Escape, then you knock yourself out, by all means. But hey, if you want me, I'll be upstairs with Nemean. Give us 20 minutes, though. Or, well, I mean, I guess 3 is probably enough, actually. So there we go, a new video format for you, but what do you think? Please do genuinely let me know in the comments if you want to see more PS1 oddities in the future, and I'll get on it for you ASAP. As always, don't forget to follow me and TripleJump on Twitter, check out our Patreon rewards, and of course, like, share, and subscribe. I've been Peter from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.